Hey guys, the next thing we're going to be discussing is how the Cold War comes to Asia. And we're going to talk about two very important conflicts that really changed the whole landscape of our relationship with Asia. One being the Chinese Civil War, and one being the Korean War. Okay? You're going to have a handout. It has on the front of it the Chinese Civil War, and it talks about the two different sides and the U.S. reaction. And then on the back, you're going to have the Korean War, and it has some maps of Korea at different stages in the conflict, and on the right side, some little boxes that help follow the developments in the time period. So let's go ahead and cut to the PowerPoint. Remember, though, that during World War II, a key ally of ours was China. And since the open door notes had been issued and now our alliance with China during World War II, we had really been building a very strong bond with China, hoping that that would be our kind of ace in the hole for helping us flourish in terms of trade and security in China. Little did we know that right after after World War II, there's going to be a massive revolution in China, and we're going to lose China to communism. And ever since then, us and China, you might be more familiar with how things are in modern times, relationships with us and China have gone from bad to okay, but by no means do we consider China to be a close ally or friend today, since they still have an authoritarian regime. So let's look here at the two different groups that are fighting in the Chinese Civil War. On the left side there, we have the nationalists. The nationalists are led by Chiang Kai-shek. And Chiang Kai-shek was the man we had supported all through World War II. He has a lot of policies that are unpopular with the common people of China. He taxes food during a famine, and he also has like a secret police force that is very punishing to the local populations. So the poorer people in China really don't like Chiang Kai-shek, and they live mainly in the rural areas, and they are greatly outnumber the people in the urban areas. But it's the more educated people in the urban areas who are loyal to Chiang Kai-shek, and so he's strong in the cities and weak in the countryside. His nemesis here is Chairman Mao Zedong. He has policies that are very popular with the common people. He wants to redistribute land. There had been kind of a feudal land ownership system in China. And he wants to redistribute the land, take it from the rich people, and redistribute it to the poor people. And so he has widespread support in China from the more populous rural people in the countryside. And so the Chinese Civil War is really going to be kind of rural forces supporting Mao against urban forces supporting Chiang Kai-shek. U.S. involvement, we decided to support Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists. This stands for nationalists here. We decided to support them with money, but we were not willing to send any troops. As you can imagine, we had just finished World War II, and there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm in the country for recommitting ourselves to a war abroad. You can see here this map. Ooh, such exciting animation. That this is the communist forces. They start out being strong up in the northeast, and then they're slowly going to defeat Chiang Kai-shek in these more urban areas, and then march all the way and take the western part as well. So the communists are going to win fairly easily. They are going to establish what's called the People's Republic of China, or called the PRC. Strange thing about names in this era, the more democratic they sound, the more likely they are to be authoritarian, not democratic. So just because it says the People's Republic of China, don't assume that there's actually any voting or signs of democratic rule. The nationalists, led by Chiang Kai-shek, they're going to flee here to Taiwan. And this is going to begin a very interesting time period in the United Nations where we don't want to admit that we lost China and give China that Security Council seat on the United Nations and let them have a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council. So from this time period in approximately 1950 until Nixon is president, so almost for 25 years, we pretend that Taiwan is China. Like little Taiwan, little island off the coast of China, we pretend like whoever is in power there, that they're really the leader of all of China. So this great kind of, we're in denial for this whole period of time. This whole ruse kind of happens where we basically take China's Security Council seat and give it to Taiwan and pretend like Taiwan is China. So that was kind of an odd reality that we embraced in the time period. So Truman comes under a lot of criticism all of a sudden because it's clear that if we were trying to contain communism, we were doing a pretty crappy job of it because we just lost a huge land with a lot of people in it to communism. So it's a failure of the containment policy. And there's a lot of outrage about who lost China. If you turn over your sheet, the next thing we want to talk about is Korea. From 1910 to 1945, Korea was a Japanese colony. It had been taken over by the Japanese. I don't know if you remember the Russo-Japanese War. Said that Japan would get Korea. At the end of World War II, the troops in the north, the Japanese troops in the north, they surrendered to Soviet forces, and the Japanese troops who had held Korea during World War II in the south, they surrendered to the United States. So there became this kind of artificial boundary all of a sudden between in Korea, where the people had previously been all united under one regime, be it Russian or Japanese or whatever. Now they have an artificial division that's introduced in their country. So it looks kind of like this. You can see here is, notice these are my chopsticks because we're talking about Asian history, so not your typical pointer here. You can see that North Korea becomes communist and is north of this 38th parallel, and Korea becomes democratic and capitalist. And this happens in 1945. Okay. North Korea, communist. They're led by this guy named Kim Il-sung, and they're allies of the Soviet Union. Kim Il-sung has a son, Kim Jong-il, who just recently stepped down and passed on his rule to Kim Jong-il. Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il. Oh, I forget his son's name. Oh, Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un, I think is his name. So we still have not this guy or this guy's son, but this. He's the grandfather of the current guy who controls North Korea. So there's been my whole point here is, forgetting the details, that there's been a constant line of succession through this family to rule Korea ever since that time. South Korea is democratic, and their leader was Syngman Rhee, and they were allies of the United States. So this is kind of an unusual development for the people of Korea because, like I said, they had been united. It's almost like if you drew a line through halfway through Raleigh and divided our people, it would seem rather odd and artificial to the people who actually live there on the ground. So, looking at the maps and the dates that are outlined there in terms of what happens from in June of 1950, something quite startling happened. North Korea was the actor in this case. They invaded and captured Seoul. So, did you catch the really exciting animation that happened here? I don't want you to miss out, so let me back it out. See, nothing. Whoa. They invaded and captured Seoul. So, it's really North Korea that starts the fighting in the Korean War by this rather audacious attack. The UN supports the South and sends troops. Now, you might be thinking, how did the UN do that? Because the Soviet Union sits on the Security Council, so why would they have supported this? Because they, of course, do want communism to spread into South Korea. Well, the answer is that the USSR was so mad that we gave Taiwan China's seat on the Security Council that the USSR was boycotting the UN during this time period. So we were able to push through this UN resolution to support the South and fight communism due to that boycott. This means troops right here. Okay. So we put Douglas MacArthur, the guy who won World War II and had rebuilt Japan and wrote their constitution. We send him down here to put this fire out, and he leads the UN troops, of which 90% of those troops are American. So this is very much a heavily American effort to contain the spread of communism. By September of 1950, North Korea has pushed UN troops almost out of South Korea. We have done very poorly here. You can see that now North Korean troops have come all the way down here, and the UN defensive line is right here. We had been pushed all the way down into this corner of South Korea, our troops. So things are going really badly. So we're trapped here at Busan, and that's kind of a low point of the UN effort in Korea. In September and October of 1950, the United Nations and United States combined forces. They have this miracle counterattack that they do here at Incheon behind the North Korean forces. And so between the attack at Incheon and the continued fighting at Busan, we're able to actually sweep the North Koreans all the way back up to this area and are almost looking like we're going to defeat North Korea and reunite Korea under a single democratic regime. As you can see, we're so close to turning this tide totally in our favor. But, unfortunately, we start to see that China starts to help North Korea at this time by helping to send troops across the line. And so from November 1950 to January of 1951, China and North Korea now combine forces, and they cross the Yalu River. This is the Yalu River here. Chinese troops cross the Yalu River, and they enter the war, and they begin pushing our forces back, all the way down here. Now, a big controversy breaks out about what should we do about this, and General MacArthur, referred to here as just Mac, because we're on a nickname basis. It's General MacArthur's idea that we need to not back up at all, and in fact, maybe we ought to use atomic weapons, and he suggested we drop maybe 20 atomic weapons maybe on China, and just really solve this whole problem, take China back, as well as win the Korean conflict. So he really wanted to go all out with the risk of using atomic bombs. Harry Truman thought this was a radical proposal and not at all something that he was going to consider, and so he said, no, we're going to maybe fight a limited war where we're going to just try and free South Korea and go back to the pre-war conditions of a divided Korea. Douglas MacArthur was very upset about this idea, and so he went to the press and other people criticizing the commander-in-chief and questioning Harry S. Truman's judgment in this case. And Harry Truman had the unfortunate decision then he had to make as to whether his insubordinate general should stay in command, and he decided that no, he's the president and he's the commander-in-chief, and then if he has an insubordinate general who's kind of talking smack about him to the public, that maybe that's unacceptable. And so he fires Douglas MacArthur to everyone's shock and amazement. I mean, this man had been around when Hoover was president, won World War II, accepted the surrender of the Japanese, rebuilt Japan, came down, led our troops in Korea. He was really a preeminent all-American hero, and he's been dismissed by Harry S. Truman over this Korea issue. So Douglas MacArthur was asked to come to speak to a joint session of Congress. That's kind of the way that Congress showed their displeasure with the president's decision. And he did do that, but then he, as he said in his speech, kind of faded away from public life. So Truman says no, MacArthur gets fired. Eventually what happens is that the North reaches Seoul, and the 38th parallel basically is where Chinese and North Korean troops push our troops back to. And so we call a ceasefire. We agree to quit fighting, and that's the end of the war. Okay? In fact, we are still in a state of war with Korea, believe it or not. We never actually have signed a treaty formally ending the war. And so that's why you might hear every once in a while such a state of tension that exists still between South and North Korea. Truman still considered this to be a success, though, even though it ended in a rather limited fashion. And we did not reunite Korea under a single leader. The reason why we consider this to be a success is that we did contain communism, and that was the whole goal of the post-war period. Unlike China, we were able to stop the spread of communism successfully. And to this day, South Korea continues to be a flourishing democratic and capitalist country. North Korea continues to be a very repressive dictatorship where the people have no freedom of speech or travel and live in a very kind of backwards state where they don't have a lot of access to technology or worldwide communication. So probably the most backwards and stagnant nation in the world is North Korea, and they have a lot of problems with starvation and economic crises caused by their rather stagnant economic system. Okay, so hopefully that helps clarify how we came to lose China and failed in containment policy of China, but how we came to have a divided Korea and one that remains divided today as a result of the Korean conflict. So I'm going to sign off with my favorite chopsticks joke. I look like a walrus. I have no pride. Do I? Really, none. See ya.